Hi, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. You got me working late on a weekend. You got me working late on a weekend because I I severely disagree with one of the greats, with one of the best, Mr. Killer Mike. I would maybe do this video in a somewhat comedic fashion, but this is too serious of an issue, and I have too much respect for Killer Mike as an artist to get silly with the topic of this video at all. If you guys have been paying attention to the news, there has been a series of marches across the country today to shore up some tangible, effective gun regulations in this country as a result of not just the Parkland mass shooting down in Florida not too long ago, but in the wake of this recent heightened sensitivity toward all mass shootings that we've grown numb to over the years since tragedies like Columbine. So Killer Mike has made some social media updates since then, stating, hey, I'm a gun owner, I advocate for gun ownership, I'm all about the Second Amendment, I don't trust the government, and I come from a family of gun owners, and that's totally fine. I honestly saw nothing particularly wrong with his stance and his opinions on a lot of these posts and updates he's made. There are people in my family who own guns. I think guns are fine. I think guns are a tool if used properly and correctly. I don't really have an issue with guns in general and think that if someone wants to go through the proper channels to attain a firearm, they should be allowed to do so. However, Killer Mike has recently appeared in an NRA-backed and produced promotional video talking about a lot of these same issues, and the logic, it's not quite there.
So I have to ask, what are you really marching for? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like a march to burn the Constitution and rewrite the parts that you all like in crayon.
Right before the video and the conversation even starts, we get essentially an NRA boogeyman being thrown in front of us where, oh, these kids are too stupid to know what they're talking about and doing. They don't understand the Constitution, even though I've seen numerous televised events featuring some of these Parkland kids, and they're literally reading the Second Amendment of the Constitution out loud, and then saying, oh, you just want to ruin the Constitution and rewrite it in crayon. Get it? Because you're kids, and you're dumb, and you don't know what you're doing. It's just really patronizing and disgusting and overly dismissive. It's a really callous tone to take with a group of people who are traumatized and whose friends are dead because of the way that your organization spends its lobbying money.
With everything that's happened, like with the Parkland shooting.
Yeah. Very tragic.
Very. And what's odd to me, I know why it's being done. You know, it's systematic.
Yeah.
But this idea that because I'm a gun owner, or I'm hardcore about the Second Amendment, or you know, from that perspective, it's like that doesn't mean that I lack the empathy or the ability to sympathize.
Not
with
at all.
what happened.
That's not at all.
If anything, it's quite the opposite.
Nobody cares about your sympathy. Nobody cares about your empathy at this point. This is exactly why people are tired of hearing, as soon as one of these tragedies happens, oh, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. Nobody gives a fuck about your thoughts and prayers. Throw them in the fucking garbage because they don't mean anything. They don't do anything. And honestly, actions speak louder than words, which is why people assume you don't actually care about these problems and you don't actually have any concern, because after a tragedy like this occurs, you don't do anything to change the issue. You don't do anything to prevent it from happening again. So people are kind of right to call out, hey, I kind of think you don't really care, you know? Yeah, sure, you know, you throw your thoughts and prayers out there. You'll say when it's brought up, oh, it's tragic, what a sad thing, but you don't do anything. You don't advocate for anything to be done. So this is just bullshit.
We disagree about how we both want to save these kids' lives.
Yeah.
Period. But somehow, because my method doesn't agree with your method, I'm a monster.
Yeah.
Or something wrong.
And that's
with
unfair.
You know what I mean?
It's not that there's something wrong with you, it's that there's something wrong with your method. And going off of what this gentleman is saying here, I don't personally know what his individual opinion on the solution to these mass shootings are. However, considering this is an NRA-backed video, I can only assume that he's taking the NRA position, which the leaders of the NRA have advocated for more people with guns on the campuses of schools, arming teachers, just putting more guns into the school system and turning schools into the hardest, toughest, most impenetrable targets that are on American soil. The thing that is wrong is that you're not looking outside of the borders of the United States of America to look at what other countries that don't have this problem are doing to prevent this problem. And some of them have had these issues before, namely Australia. And what did they do to get guns off the street? What did they do to prevent more mass shootings from happening? Putting more school resource officers on site and turning kids into near prisoners is only going to make school scarier, make school more uncomfortable, make them more unhappy at school, make it more difficult to learn at school. And what happened with the officer who was on site at Parkland? Did he charge bravely into the line of fire to protect the kids? No, he didn't. What makes you think that if you just threw more of them into the mix that it would be any better? The arming teachers argument has been thrown down time and time and time again. Wouldn't it just create confusion if you had to have officers or SWAT run into a school and you didn't know who had a gun, you didn't know who was the shooter, you didn't know who didn't have a gun? In the wake of Parkland, we've seen news stories where teachers have guns on them and kids get injured or things go wrong. And hey, I guess if a kid wants to actually commit a mass shooting, he doesn't have to bring a gun into the school anymore. He can just grab one of the easy to attain guns that are already there in abundance on the persons, or maybe in the drawer of a teacher or a resource officer. But maybe the worst and most disingenuous thing about this video right here at this particular spot is that, look, you're not holding the position that you are just because, hey, listen, this is just my opinion, man. This is just my point of view. No, this is a promotional video for the NRA and you're hosting that video. You are financially incentivized to hold this opinion. You're not just some Joe Schmo off the street. Hey guys, it's me, Joe Schmo. I just happen to be super hardcore Second Amendment. It's not like I'm working for an organization that lobbies to prevent effective gun control reform, which most of the country wants. Which I get there's an increased interest in that right now because of the Parkland shooting, but the interest was high before. It was over 50% before, years ago.
I have worked as a tireless advocate on the behalf of children, disenfranchised women in my community.
Yeah.
And I've also worked with gun groups like Georgians Against Gun Violence that are not, the most pro Second Amendment.
Yeah.
But I say if there's a table to be sat at, the gun owner needs to be there. So I kind of try to see a problem from the whole perspective. And there have been things that you've disagreed with me. There's been that I disagree with you. As friends, we've talked, right? But there was something dead on that the woman who's an NRA spokesman said. And everyone just kind of lost it. What's her name? Dana said something. I don't agree with everything Dana says, but Dana says that the tears of white mothers are like ratings. And that's so true. And it was so sad to hear her acknowledge it. Yeah. But it's true. And black people know it's true because black people say it.
This is a super disingenuous point right here for multiple reasons. Now, I'm not going to say that there aren't racial biases in the media. There most certainly are. And if this mass shooting had happened at a school where the kids looked less marketable on TV, they were less diverse, or they weren't as good or effective at using social media, or didn't have the financial resources and the privilege that they were born into, would this have snowballed in the way that it did? Most likely not. However, remember, you're doing this video, you're making this appearance on behalf of the NRA, who have they advocated for black gun owners? Have they advocated for, let's say, Philando Castile, who was a legal gun owner, and that didn't prevent a police officer from gunning him down in his vehicle? Did the NRA speak up then? Like, you're hammering into the media and basically playing into this narrative that NRA is pushing when they are guilty of the same lack of concern for the same group of people, for the same class of people who you're angry for the media for not being concerned with. And at the end of the day, the media's concern, the NRA's concern, really doesn't amount to a heap of shit, because everybody could be as concerned as they can possibly be. But if we're not actually pushing through reforms and common sense changes that are going to prevent something like Parkland from happening again, something like the gun violence that goes on every day in the streets of DC, in the streets of Chicago, from continuing at the fever pitch that it currently is, then concern doesn't matter. What does it matter?
People are accusing you of being a lackey of the NRA. Well, you're a lackey of the progressive movement because you have never disagreed with the people who tell you what to do.
As a progressive, who are the people who tell me what to do? And when am I supposed to be or supposed to not be disagreeing with them? I mean, I know that on social media and when opportunities to talk about politics come up, I have reamed corporate Democrats for actually not advocating for policies that will help the poor, help the disenfranchised, help Americans who are struggling to make ends meet, help kids go to college affordably, prevent people from going through medical bankruptcy. On top of that, I've also clowned people who are on the more authoritarian left side of things that actually do more to hurt the movement of the left than help the left. So I just don't see your complaint here. Who is the person you have in mind when making this argument or sort of throwing this line of thinking out there?
A football player just got shot by an armed white man for a traffic argument. A black teenager got shot by an armed white man in a gas station because he had played his music loud. Where were you then?
Yeah.
Well, again, to my earlier point, where was the NRA when the cops shot Philando Castile? Number one. And number two, both of these incidents were talked about and discussed pretty heavily within the progressive movement, especially under the Black Lives Matter umbrella. While both of these incidents are tragic and terrible, they're not really the same thing as a mass shooting. They matter within a completely separate context to which what went on in Columbine, what went on at Parkland, what went on at Virginia Tech.
Why do we need this? We don't need this anymore. We're so progressive. We progress past this.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're gonna progress us right off a cliff.
Yeah.
You keep going in this
You're going to
direction.
progress us into slavery.
Yeah.
And yet again, here's another NRA boogeyman that, hey, the moment we limit your freedom to attain a gun, really not just you, but for anybody, no matter what their mental state, no matter what kind of firearm they want to attain, the minute we limit that, even a little bit, boom, slavery, bam, it's slavery all over again. Which, if everybody advocating for this line of thinking, we're so obsessed, we're really so focused on freedom, on the rights bestowed upon them in the Constitution, on fairness, well, where is your obsession with this when it comes down to wage slavery? Where is your obsession with this when it comes down to unwarranted NSA spying? Like the Patriot Act, like literally your rights are being trampled on every day. They've been being trampled on every day for decades upon decades upon decades. And these people who are worried that slavery is just around the corner because we might get some effective gun regulations, you're not paying attention to your rights getting flushed down the toilet right now. So what's going on? What's your concern really?
Like I told my kids on the school walkout, I love you. If you walk out that school, walk out my house.
I'm laughing, but it's so serious.
That's simple. We are a gun-owning family.
And here you go. Here's the worst thing you can tell your kids. The worst thing you can tell your kids. And I know it's partially said in jest. Do I think Killer Mike's really going to make his kids live out on the street or just, kick them out and never want to have them live in his house again? Probably not. However, what you present to your kids when you say, and no matter what it is, it doesn't matter what the mindset or the opinion is, and it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong either. You say to your kids when they're of a certain age where they can make their own decisions, they're kind of forming their own view of the world. We're this kind of household. You think this, or you're out of here. You're out of here. And again, could be said in jest, but still, it's just as shitty. And it's just as dumb. And here's the reason why. Because you're telling your kids, don't you dare think for yourself. And the reason I am forcing my ideology upon you is because My parents before me had this ideology, and so did their parents before them. Really, truthfully, I don't know why I think what the fuck I think. But all I know is that I'm uncomfortable with you thinking differently, so I'm going to force it upon you. How is that healthy? You're not raising your kid to be a critical thinker when you tell them, think this or else. Think this or else. And you could convince yourself all that you want that, oh, well, my kids know how to deal with authority outside of my house. There's my authority, and then there's the authority they deal with everywhere else. You are your kids' first interaction with authority. So the experiences that they have dealing with your authority will have a massive impact on how they deal with authority in general for the rest of their adult lives. This is most likely a big reason as to why there are white people that, even though they see that there are statistics saying, hey, cops shoot unarmed white people. Cops shoot unarmed white people. But they look at that and they think, well, it's not really a problem. Probably had it coming. Probably had it coming. The cops are always right. Guy was just doing his job. Just doing his job. That's what you're telling your kid. Even if it's kind of somewhat of a joke, you're still the parental unit of that person, and you still hold a lot of influence over that person, and potentially a lot of negative influence if you're trying to impact the way that they approach difficult situations like this. How's anybody supposed to make a real, thoughtful decision about anything, or engage in some kind of mature, effective debate where a solution that helps everybody is reached down the road if you're telling somebody, don't you dare think anything other than what you've been raised to think? That just puts us in gridlock. You're guaranteed to raise an electorate of totally clueless voters who don't know what the hell they're going to the polls for. And listen, my parents were not perfect. There's a lot of fucked up things about my parents. But, one thing I'll give them all the credit in the world for is that they never pulled that shit with me. They never threw that line of thinking out at me, even if there were some things that we disagreed heavily upon. Because, you know what? They were either mature enough to let me think whatever I was going to think, and come to the conclusion that, well, maybe he's young and he will learn his lesson, or he'll come to another, conclusion down the road, or I have the wherewithal to sit down and have a conversation with him and say, hey, listen, here's why I think differently. Let me, instead of forcing you to think something else, let me try to challenge what you think, and maybe you either convince me or I convince you through just a healthy conversation. That's so much better, and that's so much more productive than, you're out of my house if you think A, B, C, or D. You're out of my house if you're gay. You're out of my house if you're trans. You're out of my house if you're this. You're out of my house if you're that. It's bullshit. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
We are a family where my sister farms. We're a family where we'll fish, we'll hunt, but we are not a family that jumps on every single thing an ally of ours does, because some stuff we just don't agree with.
Disagreement is fine, and it's healthy, and it's fantastic. And again, gun owners in my family, totally cool with gun ownership. However, this is a total mischaracterization of the other side of the coin. Who is a prominent voice in this whole March for Our Lives movement right now, who is advocating for the removal of all guns? Who is advocating for that? Who wants that? The only person who I can think of who is anywhere near that side of the argument, who has said anything close to that, is actually the dude who the NRA backed in the presidential campaign. That's Donald Trump, because I believe in that one little off comment he made. He said, we take the guns away and we do due process later. Not only displaying that he doesn't know what the fuck due process is, but I haven't heard anybody at any of these marches saying anything to that degree. And yet the president, who this organization, who you're making a promotional video for, has poured tons of money into his campaign. Tons of money into his campaign. Millions of dollars. He said that shit. So where are your priorities there? How does this make any sense? I feel like I'm watching a fucking episode of The Twilight Zone.
here we are, we have a march that's going on next week, and our biggest celebrities are donating millions to a march.
Yeah.
While our inner city schools over here are in deplorable conditions. We're donating $3 million to a march about gun control.
Yeah.
But yet we have communities over here that are in economic downturn. Like, it's ridiculous to me.
Yeah. Celebrities often don't know what to do. They're told what to do.
What the fuck? You gotta be kidding me. This is the dumbest shit. And I cannot believe Killer Mike is sitting at the other end of it, just nodding. If you took every dollar out of the pocket of every celebrity across the country right now, how long do you think you could really fund just the school system of New York State on all of the celebrities' money? Let's say we took all the celebrity money. How long do you think you could fund that? Are you serious? Are you kidding me? The reason schools, all schools, specifically inner city schools, are not doing well is because the government underfunds them. It has nothing to fucking do with celebrities. The reason we have underfunded schools is because our government throws untold billions and trillions of dollars into the military-industrial complex. It's not because of how much money a celebrity has in their pocket. And celebrities, of course, they're going to sink their money into a friggin' thing like March for Our Lives. Because, number one, they don't have enough money to fix something on the scale of the healthcare system or the inner city school system. But being celebrities, they have influence over the media. They have influence over where the cameras are pointed. So it makes sense that they would sink their money there. It's just this bullshit whataboutism because it trots out this line of thinking that, well, you care so much about gun violence, but shouldn't you be thinking about our inner city schools? Aren't those more important? Well, of course inner city schools are important, but it's not like this topic, it's not like this problem is unrelated because kids who go to inner city schools are greatly affected by gun violence. You expect kids who live in neighborhoods where bullets are fucking whizzing by them to go to class and think about their future and get a solid education and concentrate on their studies and do their homework when they're literally being traumatized in the area that they live in. And every single time I've seen one of these marches, you have kids who are in inner city schools. You have kids who are in DC schools being placed up prominently, speaking at the podium, letting their experiences be heard because they are victims of the same thing the Parkland kids are, but just in a different context, at a different angle. So for Killer Mike and the NRA to act as if this movement has completely forgot about them, doesn't care about black kids getting gunned down by guns, doesn't care about inner city school kids getting gunned down by firearms, for them to act like this march and this movement has completely forgotten about them, turned a blind eye to them, is totally just, it's a lie. It's a lie. It's just so weird. Killer Mike has so many bars about the government's corrupt this, don't trust this institution that, and yet you're making a promotional video with an organization that literally greases the fucking gears of politics with cash. That's literally what you're doing.
I'm very pro Second Amendment. This is why. And before you say, well, what about the children? My daughter goes to Savannah State University. There was also a shooting on that campus. Talked to my wife and daughter after that. The decision was we're going to go to Savannah. She's going to get a gun and train more. And after that, they said, Mike, we never heard that perspective. We surely respect and understand it. And they stopped pressuring him to do something he want to do. And that ain't just guns. When, as a celebrity, they ask me, hey, will you do this anti-bullying drop for radio? Absolutely not. Why? Because your child needs to get punched in the face so he can learn to punch someone back. And that isn't saying that it's right to be punched in the face. That's saying as sure as you're an adult, something or someone's going to punch you in your face. And you have to develop the aptitude and the fortitude to fight back. And that's just not in the physical.
I don't really have a lot of issues with how Mike kind of ties up a lot of what he's saying here. If he or his daughter, for their personal safety, want to own a gun, if it's legal in their state to conceal carry, that's on them. You know, that's totally a fine and legal and proper decision to make if that's something that you want to do. However, the fact that you have to make that decision, and the fact that, as he says, and I agree with this, we live in a world where the cops, sometimes they either do not show up on time, or you live in a neighborhood where they really don't give a fuck. unless they are able to come in and exploit the local population or something. So I get Killer Mike's concern and paranoia and lack of trust there. However, why does the line of thinking not go to, well, okay, we have to make this immediate decision right now for what I feel is the most logical decision for my safety and the safety of my loved ones. But beyond that, why do we live in a fucking world where this is the climate, where this is the status quo? This is not how other people are living across the world, are they? Are they constantly living in fear and they have to have a gun on their person because there might be a mass shooting at their school, at a movie theater, at any kind of public gathering of some sort? No, that's not how other people are living. That's not how other people are living their lives. So Killer Mike, in a lot of ways, in a lot of respects, I know he's a reasonable person. I know he's a cool guy. I know he's super talented. He's shown nothing but appreciation toward what I've done. But he's feeding into a lot of double standards here. He's feeding into, I think, a lot of very untrue NRA constructed narratives. And at the end of the day, nobody is really asking for anything. Nobody reasonable and nobody in power in the midst of this March for Our Lives movement is asking for anything more than common sense gun reform. Again, the only person I've heard say guns should be taken away without due process is Donald Trump, is the orange one. So I haven't heard anybody saying you can't have a gun for protection, you can't have a gun for sport, you can't have a gun for hunting. Nobody's trying to impede upon any of those rights and freedoms. But if you're so concerned with freedom, why are you not concerned with the electorate's ability to exercise its will through our representative government, as a majority of people want gun show loopholes closed? They want better background checks. They want more effective tests, in the same way that one might have to take a test to learn to drive because a car can be used in a deadly fashion, in the same way that a gun, something invented literally for killing things, can be used in a deadly fashion. I'm glad that finally we're having at least a semblance of a sensible debate around this issue in this country. But unfortunately, what continues to muddy the waters is this narrative from the NRA, and unfortunately Killer Mike in teaming up with them, that the other side is unreasonable and that all the other side wants to do is take your guns. Come on, man. Come on, dude. This is below you, dude. This is below you. I know this is below you. Again, guns are fine. Guns are cool. They're in the Second Amendment. I have nothing against people owning guns. Nothing against people owning guns. But should somebody who is a mentally ill teenager be able to so easily get his hands on military-grade weaponry? Come on, dude. Come on. That's not an unreasonable concern. That's not an unreasonable concern. And just giving other people more guns does not fix that problem. It doesn't fix the problem. All right, guys. I'll see you in the next video. It's been fun. Bye.